Lana slammed the door behind her, the sound echoing through the apartment. Her breath caught in her throat as she stared at the divorce papers Mark had just handed her, the ink still fresh, the words cold and final. The man she'd married, the man she'd sacrificed everything for, had just walked out of her life. Without so much as a word, he'd moved on. She felt the weight of betrayal hit her, sharp and deep. But there was no room for tears. Not today. Not anymore. Mark had been her everything for years. Her partner, her confidant, her world. They had built their life together, or so she thought. She had put her career on hold, her own dreams on the back burner, all for him. And now, here she was, alone, betrayed, with nothing but the paperwork that severed the last ties between them. But there was something else. A cold realization. A spark of something she hadn't felt in years. It wasn't fear. It was something far more powerful. Mark had always been the one in control. He was the one who set the course for their life, who made the decisions. And she had followed along, giving up pieces of herself one by one until there was nothing left but the shadow of a woman who used to be. She had swallowed her pride, convinced herself that sacrificing her own ambitions for his success was the right thing to do. But now, as she looked down at the divorce papers, something inside her broke free. This wasn't the end of her story. It was just the beginning. Mark didn't even try to hide it anymore. The woman he was with, Ava Miller, the daughter of his biggest investor, had been in his life for months, maybe longer. Lana had known something was off, but she had never suspected it would be this. Eva wasn't just another fling. She was the key to Mark's future. His power play. He wasn't just abandoning their marriage for another woman. He was strategically consolidating his wealth and influence, and Lana had been nothing more than a pawn in his game. As the realization settled in, the anger that had been simmering beneath the surface began to boil over. The hurt, the betrayal, the years of feeling invisible, all of it surged within her. But beneath that, something even stronger rose. Determination. A quiet resolve to take control of her own life, to rebuild what had been stolen from her. She wouldn't be a victim. Not anymore. Her phone buzzed on the counter. Mark's name flashed on the screen, but she ignored it. He had no right to speak to her now, not after what he'd done. But then another message popped up. It was from Sarah, her closest friend. "Hey, I heard. You okay?" Lana stared at the screen for a moment. The words hit her harder than she expected. No, she wasn't okay. But she would be. She typed back quickly. "I'm fine. I'll be okay." She tossed the phone aside, her eyes landing on the corner of her desk, where the project she'd been working on for months sat quietly. It was her secret. Something Mark knew nothing about. She hadn't shared it with anyone, not even Sarah. But it was about to change everything. Lana had quietly built an app during their marriage, something she'd never spoken to Mark about. It was a platform designed to empower minority women entrepreneurs, offering them resources, funding, and mentorship. She had poured countless hours into it, coding late into the night after Mark had gone to sleep, working on something that was hers, something that didn't belong to him. The app had started small, but recently it had begun to gain traction. Now it was starting to go viral. Investors were starting to call, offering millions for a piece of it. It wasn't just an app. It was her freedom. She stood in front of her desk, her hands shaking as she clicked through the messages from the investors. Her phone buzzed again, but she didn't need to look. She knew what it would say. Mark was probably pleading with her, trying to salvage what was left of their marriage. He didn't know that he had already lost. She had already made her decision. The truth was, Mark hadn't been the only one who had been playing a game. She had been too. She had built this app while pretending to be the supportive wife. She had hidden her true ambitions beneath the weight of the marriage, thinking she had no other choice. But now, the facade was gone. Mark's empire was about to fall apart, and she would be there, watching it crumble from the top. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a notification from her app. It was acquired. She let out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. The tears that had been threatening to fall were replaced by a deep, steadying calm. Mark hadn't just underestimated her. He had no idea what she was capable of. And now, she had the power, both financially and emotionally, to rebuild her life, to create something bigger than anything he had ever imagined. Lana's mind raced as she stared at the notification on her phone. Her app had just been acquired by one of the largest tech companies in the industry, a deal worth millions. It was the culmination of years of hidden effort and sleepless nights. But more than that, it was her liberation. The weight of the past few months, the constant emotional turmoil, the sacrifices, the betrayal, lifted off her shoulders in an instant. She was free. But there was no time to celebrate. Mark would be expecting her to react, to fight for the life they once had. But that wasn't the life she wanted anymore. That wasn't the life she had been fighting for. She looked at the divorce papers again. The finality of it still stung, but she knew she had made the right decision. She hadn't just signed away a marriage. She had signed away a part of herself, part of her old identity, part of the person who had put everyone else's needs before hers. That person was gone. A text message popped up on her screen from Sarah. "I can't believe it. Mark is done for. I'm so proud of you." Lana smiled, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. But before she could respond, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a call from Mark. She let it ring out, not even bothering to answer. After everything, he didn't deserve her time, especially not now. He hadn't even fought for her when she was willing to fight for him. The marriage, as painful as it was, had been her last attempt to hold on to something that was never meant to be. Now, she was ready to let go. She picked up the phone, but not to call Mark. Instead, she dialed her lawyer, ready to move forward with the divorce proceedings. The next few days were a blur. Lana threw herself into her new business venture, managing the acquisition process and negotiating contracts with her new investors. She made sure everything was lined up perfectly. She wasn't just building an empire for herself now. She was building a future, a foundation for other women like her, women who had been overlooked, underestimated, and discarded. It was her chance to make a real difference. As the week went on, she started receiving media attention. Her story spread like wildfire. The tech world was buzzing with admiration, not only for the success of her app, but for the strength she had shown in the face of betrayal. Her success was turning heads, and she was no longer just Mark Devereaux's wife. She was Lana Turner, a force to be reckoned with. But even as her career soared, a familiar sense of anger and betrayal simmered beneath the surface. She had poured so much of herself into that marriage, and now it felt like Mark was reaping the rewards of everything she had given up. The anger had been festering for too long, and she knew it was time to face him. It wasn't long before Mark reached out again, this time insisting that they meet in person. His message was simple, but there was a sense of urgency in his words that made Lana pause. He wanted to apologize, he said. He wanted to explain himself. Lana knew this moment would come. She had expected it. and part of her had even been preparing for it. Mark would try to make it all right, to salvage what was left. But what was left? The marriage, the empire, the trust they had shattered? None of it mattered to her anymore. What mattered now was her independence. They met at a small cafe in the city, the same one where they had once celebrated their engagement. The irony wasn't lost on Lana. Mark was waiting at a table, his usual confident smile now replaced with a look of regret. He stood as she approached, his eyes scanning her face for some sign of weakness. "Lana," he said softly, his voice laced with guilt. "I didn't want it to end like this. I know I've made a lot of mistakes." Lana sat down across from him, her expression neutral. "You didn't make mistakes, Mark," she replied, her voice calm and steady. "You made choices, and those choices led us here." He winced at her words, but Lana didn't soften. This wasn't about comforting him. This was about asserting control over her own story. "I thought you'd want me to fix things," Mark continued, his eyes pleading. "We can start over, try again. No," Lana interrupted, her tone firm. "You don't get to decide that. You lost your chance, Mark. You made a choice, and it was never about me. It was always about you." Mark's face hardened, the reality of her words sinking in. For the first time, Lana saw him for what he truly was, a man who had used her for his own gain. He had never valued her. Not really. Not the way she had valued him. "I know I messed up, but I never thought you'd go this far. I didn't know you had it in you," he said, his voice trembling with regret. "You're not the woman I thought you were." Lana leaned forward, her eyes locked on his. "You're right," she said quietly. "I'm not the woman you thought I was. I'm better. I'm stronger. And I've built something you'll never understand. This," she gestured to herself, to everything she had created, "is mine. And I didn't need you for it." Mark opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. He was speechless, stunned by the woman who sat in front of him. The woman he had never really seen. The woman who had just outgrown him in every way possible. "I don't need you, Mark. I don't need your approval, and I don't need your apology," Lana said, her voice steady and unwavering. "What I need is my life, and I've got it. I don't want to waste another second with you." With that, she stood, turning her back on him without a second glance. As she walked away, she could feel the weight of the past lifting, the bitterness melting away. She had won, not by playing Mark's game, but by walking away and building something far greater than he could ever have imagined. Lana walked out of the cafe, the cold air hitting her face as she took in a deep breath. It felt like she was finally breathing for the first time in years. The weight of the past was lifting, leaving her with only the future to look toward. She had finally broken free, and it wasn't just from Mark. It was from everything that had held her back, everything that had kept her in the shadows. Her phone buzzed again, pulling her back into the present. She didn't need to check it to know it was from her lawyer. The divorce papers were officially filed, and the process had begun. But for the first time, Lana didn't feel anxious. There was no fear of what would come next. There was only the certainty of her own strength. As she stepped into her car, she could already feel the excitement bubbling up. The world was hers now. She was no longer the woman who had sacrificed everything for someone else's dreams. She was the woman who had built something from the ground up, who had transformed pain into power. And she was just getting started. The next few weeks flew by in a whirlwind. The app's acquisition had been finalized. and Lana had already started making plans for her next steps. She was meeting with investors, building her team, and making connections that would elevate her project to new heights. There was no more waiting for permission. No more letting someone else call the shots. This was her moment. But it wasn't just about the money or the business. It was about proving something to herself and to everyone who had ever doubted her. She had spent years living in the shadow of someone else's success, only to realize that she was just as capable, if not more so, of achieving greatness on her own. And then there was Mark. As much as she told herself she was done with him, there was still a part of her that wondered if he was watching from the sidelines, wondering if she would fail. But she had no time for his doubts anymore. He had never believed in her, and she would never waste another second hoping for his validation. She was stronger than that. One evening, as she sat in her office, reviewing a new proposal from an investor, her phone buzzed again. It was an unknown number, but something told her to answer. "Lana." Mark's voice came through the phone, sounding defeated. "We need to talk." Her stomach tightened, but she held her ground. "I don't think there's anything left to say." "Please," he said, his tone softening. "I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. I never meant for any of this to happen. But I'm lost without you. Can't we at least try to fix things?" Lana closed her eyes, taking a deep breath before responding. "You had your chance, Mark. You had many chances. You chose Eva, you chose your business, and you chose everything but me. There's nothing left for us. I was wrong. You were always the one who was there for me, and I took it all for granted. I never saw your worth, Lana. I never saw you for who you really were." Lana's heart didn't race with the anger it once did. There was no bitterness anymore, just a calm acceptance. "You never saw me because you were too busy seeing what you wanted. I am who I am now because I learned to see myself. And that's something I couldn't have learned from you." Mark's silence spoke volumes, but it wasn't enough to change Lana's mind. She had made her peace with the past, and she wasn't going back. "I don't need you, Mark," she said, her voice firm, no longer tinged with the sorrow she had once felt. "I've learned to thrive without you, and I'm finally living for myself." The call ended, and for the first time, Lana felt a sense of relief. There were no more ties, no more regrets. The past was truly behind her, and she was moving forward, stronger, wiser, and unstoppable. A few days later, Lana was featured in a tech magazine for her innovative app and the impressive business moves she had made. The headline read, "Lana Turner, from Betrayal to Business Tycoon." The article was a celebration of her success, but it was also a testament to her resilience. In an industry dominated by men, she had carved out her own space, proving that she didn't need to follow anyone's rules but her own. Her story spread across social media, and soon she was being invited to speak at conferences, interviewed by journalists, and hailed as an inspiration. But none of it felt like validation. It felt like the beginning of something even greater. She wasn't just building a business, she was building a movement. That night, as she sat at her desk, looking over new messages from women entrepreneurs who had been inspired by her journey, Lana smiled. For the first time in years, she felt at peace with herself. She had finally become the woman she was always meant to be. Independent, driven, and full of purpose. It wasn't the money that made her feel powerful. It wasn't the fame or the recognition. It was the fact that she had taken control of her own life. That she had rebuilt herself from the ashes of betrayal. And that she had turned her pain into a force that was now changing the world. Mark had underestimated her, but it was his mistake, not hers. He had thought she was weak. He had thought that without him, she was nothing. But he was wrong. Lana Turner had found her strength in the most unlikely of places, in the darkest moments of her life. And now, she would never let anyone define her again. The next morning, Lana received a message from Sarah. "You did it. You really did it. I'm so proud of you." Lana smiled, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. She typed back, "We did it, all of us." And as she hit send, she knew that the journey was only beginning. This was her story, and it was just getting started. If Lana's journey has inspired you, don't forget to like this video, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel for more stories of resilience and empowerment. Your support means the world, and together, we can all rise.